Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Loading Bag NUFC away days. And I think even we were surprised by that one.
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting that. Daz did say he had some tricks up his sleeve in terms of new intros and outros, and that is certainly one. So, look, welcome to away days. We are back again for another Newcastle United preview. And look, these previews are just coming thick and fast, but we're loving them at the moment as Newcastle fans, Chris, because we're just winning and winning and winning. Look, what are your thoughts just on the week that's been and the days to come before the massive game at St Mary's? Oh, did you hear that?
I'm hoping you can hear me. Am I at the right point? Can you hear me? I'm still here.
I can hear you. You were a little bit delayed there. It almost stuttered for a second. Did you hear what I said there?
Yeah. So, like, you want to let me just check, but you want to hear my thoughts on the past week and how I'm feeling about going to St Mary's this weekend.
Yeah.
Sounds right. Okay. We'll bear there.
I scared you.
Yeah. Hopefully this improves. The last week it's funny, and I know we're going to talk about it with Mike shortly. But I see this as the potential banana skin. Certainly for the remaining fixtures of the season. We've got Chelsea at home after Southampton, and I actually feel more confident about that one than I do this one. Like, it's hard to describe the last few weeks, Pete. Like, and I'm sure we'll talk to Mike about it as well. Like, we're going into every game full of confidence, and like I was even thinking before on my way home from footy, I was thinking, like, what's it going to be like when we lose? Like, we obviously lost the game at Anfield, which was bad, but I didn't, like I've said previously, I didn't feel too bad about it because obviously it was a last minute winner. It was a last minute winner, and I thought we performed really well for 65 minutes, and it is Anfield, so like I'm not, I didn't go there expecting to win, so I wasn't too disappointed, but yeah, no, it's just amazing being a Newcastle fan at the minute. I look forward to every single match, and yeah, I can't wait. Literally can't wait. I do hope we get the 3 points at the weekend, and I think if we get 6 points between now and the World Cup, it'll just be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think that it's a fair point, and look, we'll hold on to your opinions on Sunday because you've held that opinion for quite a while now. When we've had chats, you've mentioned that about this particular game on Sunday being a difficult one. But before we get Mike in, look, the regulars are in the chat, the Loaded family, welcome in Jordy Team for Life. The Spanners are in the house. Lisa, Yano, welcome in. Michael. Adam McCarthy, you got Kenneth, you've even got Dash Shocks himself who's in there, and we've got Shane from Australia. Hope you're well. Good morning to you out there. Paul Gallant, thank you for sharing and showing your support as always, and there are many more as well. So thank you for joining us on the chat so far, and Tom Dixon, of course, cannot forget that. Get your questions in. For Mike, for all things Newcastle and Southampton related, we'll get those questions to Mike as the show goes on. But of course, as always, we cannot do a preview without having the opposition's view, and it's a pleasure to welcome back Mike from Matchday Vlogs. And let's get him in now. Welcome in, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Aside from my football team, I'm doing very, very well. And I thought I'd better wear something to signify that I'm a Saints fan, but it'll be obvious because it would be the bloke that's not smiling, won't it? So it's been quite something to watch Newcastle do what they do this season. And after we did our own preview on our show last night, me and Jack, and lots of people saying good things about you guys at the moment, and it's quite terrifying, really. Fourth must be dizzy up there, but it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, look, it's a pleasure, and I think I said it on our show last night on our channel. I think it's your hat trick ball. Actually, I think this is the third time you've been on Loaded on away day. So look, a little round of applause there for the old hat trick ball. I love it. No, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and to talk all things Southampton and Newcastle. But look, I'm going to stick with that point in that you've said there's been a lot of positivity and there's been a lot of positive talk about Newcastle. You know, just before we touch on Southampton, you know, what is that the kind of the talk at the moment within the sort of Southampton fan base? You know, the appreciation of what Newcastle's doing. What is that general thought of Newcastle in the build up to this game on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, it's generally, you know, there's not a lot of confidence for our final two fixtures before the World Cup, and I think, you know, looking at the momentum that you're currently on, everyone's just kind of feeling a little bit cautious for Sunday. However, many people are also saying about it, you're due a blip, so, you know, whether or not this might be the one, we shall wait and see. But all in all, it's kind of been quite amazing to see what Eddie Howe's been able to do with the squad that you've already got. Yes, you have spent money. You know, there has been money thrown at it, but there's been no silly big, show my age here, but Robinho style signing that you know Man City did to try and push on now. And you know, I think in all honesty, you're in the window now that is the best it's ever going to be. And what I mean by that is you can have a lot of other clubs looking at you going, oh yeah, it'd be funny to see Newcastle win the league. And then once you get past that, you kind of be like, well, it's expected then. And then when you don't get a result, you know, at home to one of the big clubs, you'd be disappointed. So, but with the rest of us, you know, if we beat anyone, it's like we've won the league. So it's we get that level of enjoyment. But no, it has been quite something to watch what Newcastle have done. I mean, certainly some of the goals I've seen from, was it Messi Almiron that you're calling him now? But,
Love it. It's catching on, Mike.
It's definitely catching on. And that goal he scored against Fulham, okay, it's against a 10-man side, still blooming impressive. And, you know, they hit 4+ Aston Villa. Yeah. Need to say no more, really. No,
the reason why I asked it is because I think, you know, so many that are watching the chat right now and Newcastle fans in general, we do like to kind of gauge what the opposition fans are kind of feeling, and you can't really gauge it from social media to an extent, because what you tend to see on social media is the kind of like the outrageous of the comment. Like you always get the one that blows it up, and it always paints the picture of a fan base, and it's not quite the same. Like, you know, we've had it in the build up to last weekend with Villa Watch. I don't know if you follow them or see their comments, but they've been very, you know, I'd say disrespectful, but they almost say it's banter, but it's almost disrespectful. Some of the comments they put towards Newcastle, it's aired to wind us up. And I know a lot of Villa fans, and I know, you know, we had Rich Sutherland and Billy on last week from their podcasts, and they're very respectful, very knowledgeable like Aston Villa fans, and knowledgeable on Newcastle, and they showed that. And it's always interesting. I like to speak to those that are in and around things, that see things on a regular, that kind of have that opinion. So it was nice to have your sort of perspective on that, for sure. But look, you are right, Lisa. Brandy and Blaze is in the house. The Blaze is in the house. The Brandy's here. I am feeling better today, by the way. The first Brandy I've had this week. And why not? Away days is the perfect time to make that happen.
I feel extremely well behaved. I'm on non-alcoholic lager, so there we go. Rock and roll. It's a weekday. Come on.
Rock and roll, yeah.
Rock and roll. I love it. But look, you may or may not want to talk about this, but we're going to come to Southampton because look, it's as you've said, it's been a difficult one. You probably won't want to see this, but at the moment, 17th place in the table.
You made us look like we're bottom there. I like that.
I know.
So, thanks for that.
You know what's really annoying about that, and I do apologise, is that in order to get both teams in, that's as much as I could get. I could literally only get Newcastle in and Southampton in just by the skin of their teeth, and it looks like they're polar opposites. So yeah, I do apologise for that. But look,
first world problems. Don't worry about it.
What I would say is that you're not in the relegation zone, which is a positive in itself. But look, just assess for us, please, the season so far for you.
Yep.
And you know, has it been a good one? If not, If it's not been a good one, why do you think that might be as a Southampton fan?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in terms of how we started off, I think we had probably, weirdly, one of the best starts we've had to a Premier League campaign. Up until the end of August, it was actually looking okay. We were able to sort of get a draw from coming from behind. All our points were coming from losing positions, which is something that wasn't very Southampton to do. It's normally the fact that we drop points from winning positions. So all in all, we were quite happy with that up until the end of August. And then September, we had a ton of fixtures that we just didn't show up in. We had Wolves away where we lost that 1-0. I think that was Wolves' first win of the campaign in a very, very long time. I went away to Aston Villa, lost 1-0 in a horrible game of football where no football was played. It was just generally dreadful. And then it was just a lot of results where really we weren't showing up, and they were kind of felt like they were missed opportunities, because if we'd just shown up, we could have got 3 points. And I think there's a lot of disheartened Saints fans out there pointing the finger at the manager and saying, look, we need to get a change. He's obviously not getting the players, getting the most out of players, because we spent a lot of money in the summer transfer period. I mean, a lot of money for us was close to sort of 70-80 million, and I think it was like 10 signings or something like that, all young talent. But another big factor was the fact that we were hit with injuries. So Romeo Lavia, who we're hoping is going to be back fully fit for Sunday's game, is a phenomenal player who we picked up from Manchester City Academy. He was basically our holding midfielder. There we go, primed and ready. But we let Oriol Romeo go because of the fact that Lavia was going to come in and he was definitely going to be getting first team football.
Hold on. Who's gone?
Oriol Romeo.
Really?
Yeah.
How did I not even know that?
It was weird. It was towards the end of the window, wasn't it, Mike? He just kind of went, and it was very quiet. Just went, yeah, he's gone, and it was like, oh,
yeah.
Is he gone to Spain? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I forget the name of the club he went to, but it's.
I was thinking that. Honestly, I was thinking last night. I was thinking, who we got to worry about in that midfield? We got Ward Prowse. Oh, I wonder if Romero's going to play. Like, he's always a physical. Like,
yeah, Romeo won't be getting a yellow card on Sunday. I can promise you that. There we go.
I was thinking he always leaves one on one of our players. I was thinking, well, like, is Bruno going to be the receiving end? Is that going to end his World Cup? Like, is that one of them ones? But wow, okay.
Yeah,
Girona he went to.
That's right. Yeah, wow. Girona. Yeah. Scored on his debut as well.
Did he? Yeah.
Typical.
Wow.
Couldn't believe it. But effectively, the fact that then Romeo Lavia then got a hamstring injury in that Chelsea game where we beat him 2-1. It spelled disaster for us because effectively we didn't have a holding midfield player. Like there wasn't anyone in the club. Diallo was supposed to be a kind of backup for that, but he's not a holding midfield player. And then we've had a weird situation where we've had James Ward-Prowse playing a role which isn't really comfortable to him because he's kind of like playing a pivot kind of thing in midfield. And it's just messed us around, and it just meant the fact that we haven't been able to get a consistent run of form, or any run of form, since that Chelsea game. But like I said, with Lavia coming back this weekend, it's all looking good so far. That could be completely different. And also Armo Bedakopchat, who sort of had a shoulder injury, is also due back. But weirdly, defensive-wise, I mean, ABK here is phenomenal defender. I mean, it's a young German talent who's going to be a superstar, that's for sure. But him and Salasu were fantastic. Despite the fact we were still conceding goals, they were a formidable centre-back pairing. But we've still got injuries out. I mean, Tino Livramento is a massively talented right back for us, out long-term injury. He's been out since the Brighton game last season. So we've really been hit with some issues which have left us short. But the real big issue for us is the fact that with all the great signings we made in the summer transfer window, got Bazunu in from Manchester City as well, Edozie, Larios, all coming in, we didn't get a striker. And, no disrespect to Shay Adams, he's an incredibly hard-working striker, but he does a lot more than just being a striker. He's more of a sort of kind of hard-working centre-forward kind of thing, but he's not got that kind of target man sort of approach where the midfield can aim for him. So
what you say, Mike. Just be careful what you say. what I'm saying.
I'm a massive fan of Shea Adams. He scored one of the most memorable goals I'll ever remember at Tottenham Stadium to win us 3-2. So I will have forever respect for that player. But no, he's but arguably we've been left short because Armando Broja went back to Chelsea. Shane Long left, went to Reading, so we were then left with Shea Adams and Adam Armstrong. We got Nseku Mara, but he was supposed to be like a project fourth place, kind of striker, sort of to work his way into the side eventually, but he's been forced into more of a prominent role, perhaps a lot earlier on than was originally intended.
We were linked with him, Mike. We
right,
yeah. Linked with him in the summer also. So is it one of them that it's going to take him time to really settle into English football?
I think so. Kind of yeah. I think the intention was to start him with like the B team and sort of work his way around into eventually sort of being featured. He is a talented footballer. I mean, he played an excellent through ball for one of our goals. I think it was against Leeds United at home that basically got us the point there. But no, it was a great buy, and it was kind of nice because I think the club who we got him from was about to fold into administration, and rather than us wait around for that to happen, we bought him and gave him some money to support the club really. So that might be a reason why we got him and not you. But there we go. But yeah, again, it's something that arguably. We just needed a striker to get us the goals because we haven't been able to score them. If we got a goal last weekend, we would have got a point away at Crystal Palace and things would be looking a lot more rosy. And the same goes for those away games, at Wolves, and just those areas really. But the Premier League is a tough league, and it is unforgiving. And if you can't keep a clean sheet and you can't score, you're going to get found out and you're going to be down the bottom.
You're right. You're absolutely right, and that's always been the case for teams that are conceding lots and lots and lots of goals. Or just not able to put the ball in the net. They've always been able to struggle, and there's been so many teams over the seasons that have they've struggled to do that. They might have been able to turn it around and pull out a little bit of form to be able to save themselves. I have to be honest, I think Southampton have been that team in a number of those seasons over the last 5 or 6 years. You've either had a really good start or a really good middle to the season that's been able to keep you in the league. Now, the question I've got is that obviously with the start that you've had and the way that you're thinking at the moment about your team, do you think that Southampton have the capacity right now? Bearing in mind a lot of the young players that you've signed in the summer, do you think you've got the capacity to turn this around and have that upturn in form that's going to potentially keep you in the league this season?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's a case of a lot of changes coming in over the summer. It's going to take time for them to establish and learn the system. The only real question mark for us is who's going to be leading that. There's a lot of talk with perhaps this is the final 2 games of Ralph Hasenhüttl's reign at Southampton. What's it going to look like after the World Cup break? We do have a good run of games. Well, I say a good run of games, but they're winnable games. We've got I think Brighton at home on Boxing Day, then we've got Nottingham Forest, and we've got Fulham, and then we've got a succession of games where ultimately you win a couple of those and it looks completely different. But there's still plenty of time to go. I mean, this time last season, you guys hadn't even got a win, and then look how you turned it around. So there's always going to be plenty of time to do that. And I think with respect to a lot of the clubs in and around us, they're kind of pretty similar in terms of the misgivings of them. And do I think there are 3 worse clubs in the Premier League than us? I think there might be, but I think in all honesty, the bottom half of the table could be anyone. It just depends who pulls it together the best and gets out of it really.
Yeah, Chris, I'm going to come to you just on your thoughts of Southampton. Mike's had his opinion from a Southampton perspective. You know, from what you've seen, however big or however little you've seen of Southampton. You know, I asked him the question: Does Mike think that they could potentially turn it round? You know, how have you assessed Southampton's season based on, you know, the league table that we put up and how they've maybe started in comparison to other seasons? Do you think it could be a difficult season for them in this kind of ever-changing Premier League season?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a difficult season, but I completely agree with what Mike's saying. I think there's 3 worse teams in Southampton. Like, I wouldn't looking at Southampton, you know, looking at the manager, looking at the players they brought in. Obviously, some players hit the ground running, some players take a little bit more time. I just think Southampton have got too much quality in the squad for me. Anyway, I like, I've already spoken about how I feel like, you know, it could be a tough game, and you never quite know what you're going to get with Southampton. And Mike, tell me if I'm wrong here, but you normally make a bit of a slow start to the season, don't you? And then you pick up, and then towards the end of the season you drop off again, and then it's a bit of panic stations. If I'm right in saying that, but I think Southampton will be fine this season. They just probably need to win a games, and hey, not that I wish for it at the weekends, but, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if Southampton go and turn up, put in a fantastic performance, get 3 points, and then, you know, drag themselves out of it. The one thing you can say, Pete, I don't know if you've still got the league table there. It's very, very tight at the bottom. So yeah, as you can see there, what is it? 4 points separating 17th and 9th. So really, you know, if you string together 2 or 3 wins, you're right out of it, and then all of a sudden people then start going, could you make a European push? Could you? Do you know what I mean? It's
a win takes you up to Brentford.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mad. It's mad.
But yeah, looking at that list, so below there, I'm assuming off the top of my head, we've got Forest, we've got
Wolves and Leicester.
Leicester
still there. Like, Leicester will drag themselves out of it. But I think so. I think they've got too much quality. I just think they've got too much quality. Yeah, I know.
2 reasons. I'm based in Leicester. We want Madison.
Well, exactly. I mean, to be honest, Pete, I don't even think that'll affect the Madison deal. Madison's probably already looking at it, and, you know, Leicester aren't going to get anywhere near that top 8. I don't think they'll be fine, but they're not going to finish in the top 8, in my opinion. But I think Everton could be in trouble. Palace could be in trouble. Brentford could be in trouble. My issue with Palace, and some people may be surprised when I say Palace, the fact that they hang the hat on Wilfried Zaha, and that worries me. That really worries me, because I don't think he's the player that he was maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago. And, you know, I know they've got Mateta and they've got Edwards and Benteke, but I don't know.
Well, Chris, you brought us to a great point, because actually Southampton's last game was against Palace.
Yes.
Selhurst Park. So, Mike, from your perspective, Chris has made some great points about Zaha and a number of players at Palace. You know, from watching the game, you know, what did you make of Palace? Were they really a great side? Did they deserve the win, or was it, you know, a little bit of luck? I didn't watch the game personally, so I didn't see it.
Yeah, well, sadly, I did watch the first half, which was pretty dreadful from our side of things. But you know, they have a very young side. I mean, you know, we have the youngest side in the Premier League at Southampton, but they have a very young attacking side. And really, in all honesty, in the first half, they should have been out of sight, maybe 2-3-0. So they've got some creative players. I mean, I forget the name of
Eze and Elise.
That's it. Yeah. So they got some creativity outside of Wilfried Zaha, but, you know, he's still a terror out there in terms of terrorising the centre backs and the wing backs, and you know, ultimately sort of opened us up from you know, the right back position, and sort of you know, got their goal in the first half. But in the second half, where we changed things up a bit, I kind of felt begrudged that we didn't get a point from that game, because it was really, you know, something that we were then dominating in the second half, but we couldn't get a goal. So, I mean, I think Palace, they've always, I thought they looked good against Arsenal when they played them. Was that the opening game of the season? I think it was the opening game of the season. I thought they looked good against them. So yeah, no, I think generally Palace will be all right. But it's Everton are looking slightly better. They got arguably one of the best defensive records in the league, along with you guys. West Ham are all over the place, and I think that's perhaps due to the lightness of their squad. Bournemouth, it's amazing to see that they've got the 3 wins already. Considering how little investment that they've had. But the real ones underachieving, I think, are Aston Villa, who's only above us on goals scored or something like that. So, but who do I expect to climb out? Leicester, yeah, pretty much. But I've digressed onto the league table now. But all in all, I was not impressed with Palace, but yeah, no, a decent side.
Nah, fair enough. No, that's a fair point. Look, I think there's a few questions in the chat. I know our very own Daz has come up with an absolute cracker. I don't know if you want to.
We'll start with that one.
I'm ready. That one. Come on.
So, question for Mike: if you were to name your price for Kyle Walker-Peters, what would he sell for?
Oh wow. Okay.
There's a reason why he said that, and it's the bit at the end. He said there's some loaded admirers, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I really, really like Kyle Walker-Peters, and look, we have Manquillo, we've got Kraft, who's out with a long-term injury, and if we're looking for a backup for Trippier over the next 2 years, for me, not even a backup really, someone because he can play left and right. Someone to bring into the squad that can really push this team on, and talking for us personally, I think Kyle Walker-Peters is perfect. He's done a fantastic job for you, in my opinion. What's your opinion on him from your point of view, and what price would you sell him for?
He's massively overrated. You don't want him. It'll be terrible for you. No, He's like you say, he's one of those players that come out on the right back position, the left back position, and I think anywhere he goes, he's going to want to play first team. He's going to want to be first choice wherever he goes. So whether or not that could be something that could be, being a versatile right or left back position. In terms of price, it's all going to come down to what's left on the contract, really, isn't it? If he's got, because I think he's signed up for another 2 years. So realistically speaking, that could be wide open to around 50 million quid. Just really depends on what the purse strings are going to be saying on the Southampton board, and whether or not we can time down to a contract that will extend it a bit more and push the price up a bit more. But let's be honest, that's why Ward-Prowse signed again at the beginning of last season. It was basically to put a bit of price protection on him, and sort of hold him down for a bit. But yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't open to the fact that there would be clubs looking at them. I would be offended if they weren't. Man United were looking at him as well over the summer. There were talks about him going back to Spurs. I think there's perhaps a buyback clause in there somewhere as well when he came to us. But ultimately, no, I don't want to sell him. And But with Tino Livramento as well, and we've got arguably 2 of the best right backs in the league, and they're kind of fighting for a position at Southampton. So, when Tino comes back fully fit, who knows what's going to happen? But we certainly want to keep hold of him. And if he goes for anything less than 50, I'm going to be gutted. So that should hopefully give you your answer.
I was expecting, when Mike said they had 2 of the best right backs in the league, I was fully expecting a picture of Kevin Trippier then. I was just waiting for it to come on the screen. I was waiting for it.
Yeah, we can do it. We can do it.
Do you know what? Someone on our broadcast last night.
That's what he thought to that.
Yeah,
that's what Trippier thought to that.
So, some of the people on our broadcast last night, they were doing our score predictions, and someone said 2-0 to Newcastle, and someone said 2-0 to Newcastle with a Trippier free kick, and I was like, oh, that would really hurt, in the sense that we'd see a free kick go in and know that, we've got someone that can do that, but they're not doing it, and they haven't done it at all this season. So that would be like a cruel. In fact, you can clip this up. You'll be able to see if that happens on Sunday, but I certainly hope not.
Well, yeah, he is partial to a wonder strike. So let's wait and see on that. But no, great points on that. Just Chris, before we move on, your thoughts on Kyle Walker-Peters. Would you take him at Newcastle? Have you watched much of him to kind of gauge an opinion yet?
Yeah, I mean, I actually I saw him originally at Spurs, and again, like he always looked quite impressive, and I was surprised that Spurs let him go. But I think Spurs wanted to go down a particular route, didn't they? There were certain players they were after, and it turns out it doesn't surprise me. Like Mike said, that they have got a buyback clause because obviously they must have thought he had something about him. I suppose, my only concern is Mike quoting the 50 million. Like, you know, I can fully see why Mike wants that, like, and Southampton would want that. I totally get it. It's probably one of those, isn't it, where if you've got an established wing back or full back who performs well in the Premier League is overperforming, he's probably out of our reach to a degree at this minute, because I just can't see us ever spending that much. Well, not ever, but certainly in the next 2 or 3 years, I just don't think we'd do that. We'd probably end up doing what Southampton did initially by signing him as like a prospect and then turning him into a top right back or left back, whatever you want to play him. Not to say I don't rate him. I think he looks a really, really good player. Maybe we could have this conversation in a year's time when he's only got a year left on his contract. Who knows? But obviously, Kieran Trippier would need replace him. But I imagine he'll be here for at least another 2 years, if not longer. So we don't have to worry about right back, left back too much at the minute. But maybe, well, I say right back, left back. We don't have to worry about right back too much at the minute, but maybe left back. It will be interesting to see who we go for, but we'll have to see. But yeah, I'm a fan of him. I like him. I think he looks like he's going to be really good. And how old is he, Mike? Is he like early mid-20s? Mid-20s?
Yeah, I think he's early 20s, maybe 22, 23, something like that.
Yeah. So he's yeah.
He's
going to be good.
He's a perfect Dan Ashworth signing. He really is. But
he's quite old for our squad, actually. He's probably got his bus pass, and, got all that sorted.
But the players you've signed this summer, definitely. But I think it brings us to a nice point where we say,
yes,
the old Chrissy Hall segment. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. We've had so many new subscribers. We've got 330. We're 330 away from 5K subscribers. Wow. So if you're new to the chat, click that subscribe button. It only takes a second, but it doesn't half make a difference to the channel. So thank you for all your support. Come and subscribe to the Loaded family. Massive thanks for everyone. And look, Daz has said it as well. Hit those likes if you're new to the chat. Sub, it's all for free. And of course, thank you for tuning in. Absolutely spot on. A couple of other questions, quick fire questions before we move to the next section.
Yeah, we've got a couple of quick ones I can run by Mike. And well, actually, this one's for all three of us. But Nathan Stapleton asks, question for all three: do you think Ward-Prowse will go to the World Cup? Gotta let Mike answer first.
Yeah, on current form, I'll probably say no at the moment, and I think the only reason he would go is perhaps due to injuries elsewhere. But if there's injuries elsewhere, I think Southgate will just take more defenders, won't he? That's normally the way he does it.
Or right backs.
Or right backs, yeah, exactly. But I think he's a great asset to have in the side. But it'll just be down to who's fit and available. But he's not really doing well. It's kind of unfair because he's been pushed into a role that's not natural to him. So he's not looking great in terms of what he's been able to do. He doesn't have anything to aim at up front as well. So I kind of feel a little bit sorry for him on that regard. But if I was to say at this stage in time, is he on the team sheet? I'd say no.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, Chris, I love him to go though. Love him to go.
Yeah, well, would you take him, Chris? Interesting.
Me personally, I'd take him. I mean, I think we've spoke previously about this, so this won't come as a shock to Mike. But like, I'm not Ward-Prowse's biggest fan in terms of what my general opinion of him. I don't watch him week in, week out like Mike does, obviously, and I'm not saying he's a bad player by any stretch, but I would take him purely for that set piece. Yep. That he's got an absolutely fantastic set piece on him, and I'm assuming you want him on the pitch. I'm assuming his penalties are pretty good as well, Mike. I would have thought.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty decent in terms of what you can do on the penalty spot. Yeah.
So I'd take him. And I don't think England are blessed. I wouldn't say anyway. In the centre of the park, I'd certainly take Ward-Prowse over the likes of Henderson or Oxlade-Chamberlain or the usuals who get in. I'd definitely, I'd definitely take him over them.
And if Calvin Phillips is fit,
yeah, this is it. Yeah, this is it.
Played all season.
No.
Would you take a player that's not played all season?
Well, yeah.
That's, recovering from shoulder surgery. I personally wouldn't.
No.
Mm.
What about you, Pete?
Yeah, I would. Is he going to start? Probably not. But he's one of those players that could come on late in a game, and where you need something magical from a player, just a free kick or a delivery or something, a penalty, like you mentioned, that could just make a difference. You always need those individual stars that can produce something special to be part of your overall squad. And I think for that reason, I'd have him in the team. I would, in the squad, purely for that reason. I really would. He hasn't been the best for Southampton this season. He hasn't been as sort of, special as what he's been in previous seasons. But I think there's still something about him that could make a difference to the England team for me. Yeah. So I would. But
I feel like I've answered a different question, because you've all said, would you take him? And the question was, do you think he will go? So I would definitely take him.
You take him.
I definitely take him, yeah, for all the reasons you guys have given. But do I think he'll go to the Cup? I can't think he might not, which I'd be devastated for him. So
okay, yeah. So to be fair, mate, yeah, that is on current form. I can kind of see where Mike's come from, and don't forget, Pete. Mike's probably the most qualified person to answer that, because Mike's been watching him all season. So I don't know.
Do I think he'll go? Yes, purely because Gareth Southgate likes to take the squad or a group of players that he's known and trusted. And he's been in those squads on a regular basis. So for me, I think on that basis, regardless that his form hasn't been as spectacular as what it has been previously, I think he'll go for that reason. But beyond this tournament, it's up for grabs in terms of whether he gets in the squad again. That's kind of where I sit on that personally.
Yeah. We've got a guest in the chat called Tom Cleal. Now, I don't know if you know Tom. Mike, yeah, there you go. I had a feeling you might. He said he was a Southampton fan, so I had a feeling you might.
This, Tom?
Tom asks, missing a quality forward, and that's Saints' problem. Now, I wanted to kind of expand a little bit on this, Mike, because I know that you alluded to the fact that you're missing a centre forward. I know you've got Adam Armstrong, you've got Shea Adams. But my question to you was going to be, one, do you think you're going to get one in January? And two, if you could get someone realistically, who would that striker be? Or have you been linked to anyone?
Yeah, I mean, basically in the summer transfer window, we were linked with Cody Gakpo, who was PSV Eindhoven. It would have been quite a coup for us. And effectively what happened, from my understanding of the concrete evidence of Twitter, is that Leeds United were also interested in him as well, and they sent a plane over to basically go and get him, and them being involved kind of messed it around, and he scored a hat-trick during that period that we were trying to sign him, and the fans really didn't want him to go at PSV Eindhoven, and it didn't happen. But what might change that in the January transfer window is they have all kinds of financial troubles, so they need to offload some players. Do I think that will happen? I think perhaps a few more eyeballs are on him, so it all depends on what's going on elsewhere. But there's been other players linked, but ultimately we are going to need to have a striker. But January's so tough to get a decent player in. So it, and also just after a World Cup, perhaps price tags might go through the roof because everyone looks amazing, or things might go under the radar. So you never know really. But it is, Tom brings up an excellent point, because he's agreeing with me that we're missing out on a striker here. So, but yeah, would have been nice to have Cody Gakpo.
Yeah, good player. I've been dying to ask you this as well, Mike. And even though you've been on the show 3 times, I've never actually asked you this. So Michael Pomar, it's a great one. Is that a painting in the background, Mike?
It is a green screen. That's basically what that is. So I can put
okay.
all kinds of magic things in there. It's literally the window into St Mary's, and we sit. Let me see there. So if you're in the away support, you're over. Where are we going? Over here.
Yeah.
Okay. So you will see us clear as day in just above the disabled section to the right of it as you look at it. And we'll be there. Me and Jack will be waving at all the Newcastle fans. So just keep it down, yeah? You know.
Yeah. I remember this because I watched your vlog when Bruno scored his goal.
Oh man, yeah,
St Mary's. So I knew where you were sitting because where you kind of put your camera, it was right near where the away fans were. We could see the away fans going absolutely mental when those goals went in. So
yeah.
I knew roughly where you were sitting in the stadium, having been to St Mary's before.
You and 7,000 other Newcastle fans that watched that episode, yeah, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Cheers for the ad revenue.
Yeah. It was definitely a great vlog. Yeah, look, if anyone hasn't watched it, go back and watch it again because it's a great vlog, and you guys are brilliant at what you do. So fair play.
Thank you.
Right, moving on to the next section. In fact, you know what? I'm going to switch this up a little bit. Ready for some stats?
Extra.
It's new all over the place today.
Extra.
Dad is throwing spanners in the works all over the place. And of course, like magic, he appears. Keith, Double O Stato, welcome to Away Days. How are you, my man?
Very well, Pete. Not so bad at all. How are you all doing? Are you all right?
Very good, thank you.
Good stuff.
Good. Great to join it. Grateful for you joining us. Look, another massive game for Newcastle and for Southampton this Sunday. And I'm sure you've got plenty. In fact, I know you have got plenty of stats ready for Newcastle United and Southampton. So what have you got for us this week, Keith? Hopefully some good news for the black and whites.
Got a load of stats here tonight on Southampton versus Newcastle. Very detailed history these clubs have had. The longest trip of the year for both clubs. I've got some head-to-head stats, then I've got some stats on the managers, players as well, and some general at the end. So the head-to-head stats favour Newcastle slightly. In history, there's been 104 games between the two clubs. Newcastle have won 42, they've drawn 24, and they've lost 38. Also in the Premier League, 42 games. Again, a slight advantage to Newcastle with 17 wins compared to 9 draws and 16 wins for Southampton. Newcastle have got a slightly better offensive record in the fixture with 69 goals compared to 66 goals for Southampton. However, Southampton have got a slightly better defensive record, 8 clean sheets compared to 7 clean sheets to Newcastle. Newcastle's records against Southampton in recent games in the Premier League really good. It's improving. Played 10, won 6, drawn 3, and lost 1. And that includes a rare double from the 2019-20 season when Newcastle won at the St Mary's Stadium 1-0 with a goal from ASM. And that at the time was only their second win in 12 games at St Mary's, which has now improved to 3 3 games that they've won in the league against Southampton at St Mary's, with 4 draws and 6 defeats overall. Before moving to St Mary's, Newcastle didn't have such a good record at the Dell. That went on a run, a 15-game winless run at the Dell, 4 draws and 11 defeats, and a run that went back to 1972 when the last won. 2-0 away defeat at St Mary's has been Newcastle's only defeat in 10 games against Southampton. I think that was as well during the pandemic season as well, when there were no away fans. So Newcastle are certainly coping better at St Mary's these days than they used to at the Old Dell. Newcastle are looking to win consecutive away league games against Southampton for the first time ever. We're all got our fingers crossed, hoping that'll happen on Sunday. Moving on to the managers, Eddie Howe's managerial record against Southampton: he's managed 15, he's won 3, he's drawn 5, and he's lost 7. And Ralph Hasenhüttl's managerial record against Newcastle is even worse than Eddie Howe's against Southampton. He's managed 7 games, he's only won once, he's drawn once, and he's lost 5 games against Newcastle. Moving on to the players, Callum Wilson has scored 4 goals in 10 games against Southampton. And Southampton's top goal scorers this season is Che Adams with 5 goals in 13 games. Goalkeepers, Nick Pope is tied with Edison for having the most clean sheets in the Premier League this season, with 6 clean sheets in 13 games in total. Whilst Gavin Bazunu has 1 clean sheet for Southampton this season. Some general stats here. Southampton haven't won any of their 13 Premier League games against teams starting the day in the top 4 of the table. They've drawn 5 and they've lost 8. And that run goes back since they won 1-0 against Southampton in January of 2021. Southampton have also conceded 39 goals in these 13 games. So that's an average of 3 goals per game. I'm sorry, Southampton. I'm really sorry. I'm just piling it on here. It's normally the other way around. Newcastle have won last.
Yeah.
Get the violin out. Get the violin out. Newcastle have won their last 3 Premier League games, and they're looking to win 4. And the last time that happened was only in April. Newcastle.
Sounds bizarre saying that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It feels strange, certainly considering this time last year, the reversal. And Newcastle, lastly, Newcastle are going to, they'll break the record for unbeaten games in the Premier League if they don't lose to Southampton on Sunday. So that's going to break the record that they set in 93-94 when they went unbeaten 8 break games on 2 occasions. So they're making history. Can they extend it on Sunday by going 9 games unbeaten with a draw or a win?
Didn't know that. That's a great stat, that, Keith. So we haven't. If we avoid defeat against Southampton on Sunday, it betters a previous record which was held in 92-93.
93-94. Keegan's first season in the Premier League with Newcastle. So fingers crossed that extends. I'm sure it'll be an entertaining game, this one, because Southampton are certainly going to be looking to improve on the previous form. And, some of those games maybe only tell part of the story, some of those results, because, they played really well against Arsenal in the second half and managed to get a point at St Mary's. So,
yeah, it's worth a mention.
Definitely. Look, I think Chris, Mike, you'd all agree there's some fantastic stats there from Keith.
Yeah.
Really, really good stats
Spot
there.
on, Keith.
And you know what, Mike, you were there with the violin, but I'm going to be honest, for me and Chris listening to Keith week in, week out, we're knowing it was for the violin because normally the stats are not going our way. So Keith, absolute top man.
You're welcome. You're welcome. That's all I can say.
Our way, this week, that's for sure. But that's a great stat. You know, if we can get that sort of record that's not been beaten since what 93, 94 season, that would be outstanding. And it would just put another notch on Howe's belt for what he's achieved at the club so far under his tenure. So absolutely fantastic stuff.
I mean, the other mad thing about that is the Hasenhüttl's only win against Newcastle United was the win that put us top of the league. So mad that, you know, when you look at stats like that, it's just like crazy.
Was that the same year as well when Southampton lost 9-0 to Leicester at St Mary's? Did that happen in the same season, or was that one of the other seasons?
Was that the season
United
before?
one?
Yeah,
that was the United season.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the season before.
Yeah.
We didn't get one last season.
Imagine that being buzzing because you didn't get a score like that. But no, there's been some horrific scores against Southampton over the year. So you know what, you take that as a positive. That is for sure. Look, lots of comments and various other things coming through, but I want to switch gears slightly to the next, to another section of the show. Mike, you might not have seen this, but we've got the tactics board up. You sent me your team that you thought would start on Sunday. Let me know whether the positions and how they're set out is quite right, whether you want me to move things around or not. Does that look about right, or was would Aribo be slightly sat back?
Aribo kind of plays like there's no one else on the pitch, so he kind of does whatever he wants and isn't great defensively. So he's a very talented footballer, but in terms of the areas that he plays, he kind of needs someone else to do, covering for him when he goes missing. So yeah, I would say Shea Adams up front with Aribo with a bit of a license to go and do what he wants really. And I think with Lavia being in sort of that holding role, that's going to be the game changing position for us, because effectively, if he can hold up the play and find the passes to the players in front of him, that's where we'll start getting creative and start getting our chances. It's what we've been missing. Is what we've been missing completely, because we just simply haven't had that can just hold up midfield and just take their time. It's just been a mad back and forth in midfield for us for the last few weeks. So yeah.
Interesting. You know what? One player I forgot about that I've got a picture of him and I didn't realise. Ainsley Maitland-Niles on loan from Arsenal playing, and you've selected him as right back here. I forgot because we were linked with him. Potentially, it was either going to be Newcastle or Southampton. Potentially, he was going to go on loan to, and obviously he went on loan to Southampton. And it's interesting that you've put him in your team. But look. From your perspective, before we move on to the next section, because I know Chris has got another section on this tactics board that we're going to get into. Just really quickly, Mike, from your perspective, looking at the two lineups here, and look, this is only my perspective on what the lineup's going to be, hasn't really changed much other than Joe Linton suspended for the game on Sunday. So I've brought Murphy in rather than ASM just because he's coming back from numerous hamstring injuries, and I think there might be a little bit more kind of cautious with him. It's pretty much the same team that played the same team that played against Villa, other than this position here. Where do you think Southampton can cause problems for Newcastle, and where do you think you could potentially win the game from a Southampton perspective?
Great question. We tend to sort of work it out from the right back and left back position. Ainsley Maitland-Niles was brought in to be a kind of a versatile player that could play in midfield. He could play in the right or left back position, and that's why I was brought in. Really, I put him in right back, and in fact, I think Jack made the call last night on the show, because I was kind of thinking it might stick with Lianco, because he's kind of been like an old school right back, not really pushing forward too much, but doing more of a defensive, old school sort of Gary Neville sort of right back position. But in terms of how we get creative, I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles is more progressive in terms of sort of pushing up the pitch. And if Armel Bella-Kopchat is back fit and Salasi's back fit, Salasi starts as usual, then that will be a solid centre-back pairing. There's also Coletta Carr, who may be in place of Kopchat if he's not fully fit, but he's yet to be dribbled past in the Premier League. So that's someone else who's sort of, being a bit more of a solid, formidable Croatian centre-back that we've got. But in terms of where we're going to win it, I think we're going to win it in terms of the creativity in midfield, with Lavia holding up the ball, finding the passes through to the players in front of him. Aribo's a very tricky player. I mean, he can sort of, dribble past wherever he wants. I mean, he kind of did crazy things against Arsenal at home last time out. And, something to behold, really, what he was able to do. And Samuel Dozie there on the left wing, again, I mean, he's a very young, talented footballer come from the Manchester City Academy, who can do great things as well. Very, very fast, very creative, and, ultimately could cause problems if there isn't pace to match him on that side. So we'll just have to wait and see, really.
Interesting. So it looks like the wings are going to be your ways in terms of pace, but the creativity looking at coming from here and potentially here. And obviously, you've got Ward-Prowse, of course, from set pieces as well. But from Lavia, from a defensive position, Aribo being sort of the maverick that Alan Saint-Maximin is for us in terms of just going out and doing.
That's a good shout.
Best, in terms of that. And look, he seems like he's had a decent start at Southampton. Obviously, he was brilliant at Rangers, but obviously playing in the Premier League is different. But he's showing that he's capable. Interesting. Look. From your perspective, Chris, I want to get your thoughts, and as well, Keith, really, really quickly, just on where you think Newcastle could potentially win the game against Southampton on Sunday.
Miggy Almiron. No. I mean, yeah, Miggy's obviously in fantastic form at the minute, isn't he? And I said that tongue in cheek, but yeah, Miggy Almiron is certainly a threat. You know as well as I do, Pete, and I'm sure everyone at home knows as well. When Bruno's in that team, I put Bruno up against anybody in the league. That's how highly we rate him. Callum Wilson, massive threat as well. I suppose the biggest question mark this week for me is probably Murphy. Big game for him. And do you know what? I actually do hope he gets the nods, because I want ASM to I want him to be eased back in. I don't want to rush him. We don't need to rush him. And to be fair, Jacob Murphy did fantastically well when he came on against Villa. Fantastic strike when he hit the post. So a good cameo. And now Eddie Howe should be putting an arm around him and saying, right, go on, show us what you can do. Here's your opportunity. Go and impress. It'll be a good battle with Ainsley Maitland-Niles, who's he's not sluggish whatsoever. He's got a bit of pace to him as well. So it'll be an interesting battle. But yeah, Aribo sounds really interesting. I mean, I've seen glimpses of Aribo, and I'm correct in saying, Mike, you got him from Rangers. That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, seen bits of him in the Scottish League, but obviously you want to see him in the Premier League, don't you? You want to see him performing. And it's funny you saying that, because when you were talking about him, I was thinking to myself, sounds like ASM, and then that's exactly what Pete said. Bit of an ASM where you don't quite know what you're going to get, but you will forgive his lack of defensive. What's the word I'm looking for? Like he doesn't always do the job that you'd want him to. But if he's responsibilities. But if he's performing forward, then you've got no issues. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good matchup this weekend. And yeah, but Keith, go on, mate. What do you think on both 11s?
Yeah, I agree with what you were saying there, Chris, about Miggy Almiron. He's just been on fire recently. If ever there was a more deserving player of the month, Premier League player of the month, it would be Almiron. Also think Bruno as well. We all think of that. Remember that back heel, that memorable goal is Lightning going to strike twice on Sunday? You know, with another brilliant goal. But then again, you know, you've got other players there in that midfield as well. Willick, who can create issues as well with the speed and the pace coming in. Murphy as well. I think Murphy's, you know, he's struck the crossbar so many times. At least he's having a go. You know, he's improving, and I think Newcastle's back line is a strong back line. Well, I think it's going to be an open, entertaining game because, again, you know, Che Adams has been in great form for Southampton, and Ward-Prowse is always a concern for me when he plays against Newcastle. Certainly from set pieces, I'd be concerned, you know, from the 30 yards if Newcastle are giving away free kicks in the game. And I also think Arabo as well, you know, putting the crosses in, I think he could create some problems as well.
I agree.
You know, coming in from the front line.
Definitely. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if these boys are the matchup here, because as you mentioned, Mike, these are the probably maybe the first choice centre back pairing.
Yeah, definitely.
Guys, and look, there's been a lot of talk about Salasu and how good he's been. There was talk in January and some slight talks in the summer early on that he could be someone that Newcastle was looking at. More so in January, a little bit less in the summer, particularly because we got Sven Botman. But you know, he looks like a talented boy. He looks like he's very, very capable. I'm going to be honest. I was distraught when you brought Bazunu because he has always been a highly rated goalkeeper that was always looked like he had a real future at Man City. And we were looking at a goalkeeper. I personally thought we'd have Martin Dubravka and maybe get someone like him in as an understudy to then become the number one. We obviously got Pope, and I'm absolutely buzzing we got Pope because he's been such a good goalkeeper. But Bazunu is a terrific goalkeeper, and yes, he might have only kept sort of one clean sheet this season. But he's also made some fantastic saves and looked a really accomplished goalkeeper. And sometimes it's not necessarily about you when you can see goals. Sometimes it can be about the rest of the team and how the team's performing as to, you know, how many goals you concede. But I can imagine, and I don't know this for sure, but I can imagine that he's kept those numbers down for Southampton this season with some of the saves and how organised he's been as a goalkeeper. So, yeah, very, very interesting. I do think this will be the setup. I think Dan Burn, I think he's squashed the argument of pace and being able to be beaten for pace. We've had this argument against the likes of Man United, against Everton with Gordon and Anthony, and then again against Aston Villa. You know, he is an established left back now for Newcastle United and playing very, very well. You know, fully deserves his start. Murphy, I think it was harsh in him losing his place. So I think giving him the nod would be that confidence boost that I think he deserves. Alisson Maximin, although we love him, we want him to be fit and raring to go. We don't want him to be playing at 60, 70, 80%. And who wouldn't want Alan St. Maximin as a Newcastle fan coming on the last 15, 20 minutes and being able to be explosive and potentially either win us the game or seal the game for us at this point in time as this team's building. This defensive unit, though, this defensive five is fantastic. And we've talked about Sean Longstaff. He's got an important game to play, particularly with this man, like you've talked about, Mike, being a free role and being able to roam and move. I actually think this will be a really interesting game for Sean Longstaff because as that sitter, you know, he's going to be probably minding him more than anything because Adams will be occupied by Botman and Shaw. You know, Aribo, can Longstaff manage him? Can he break up the play? Can he stop him from making runs in and behind and getting balls in these deep areas? You know, but equally, I've got to say, can Lavia, as a young defensive midfielder, although very, very good, and can Ward-Prowse, who is a good player, but can they deal with the press? Can they deal with the press here? Can they deal with Willock, Bruno, Wilson, Murphy, Almiron, that are going to press as high as possible on every given occasion? And ultimately, it's going to be like this with the rest of the boys pushed right up the pitch, and we're really going to put pressure on Southampton. So I think it's going to be a tough job for Adams. I think it's going to be maybe a different type of job for Aribo in terms of how much possession and how much joy you get, because we just close things in so well as a team. It's so well drilled, and it is very much, Chris, you're absolutely right, a really tight knit game. It's going to be less expansive than the likes of Arsenal. And I know you got a lot of joy against Arsenal, particularly in the second half. It may not be the same type of game, and I think that's where we could potentially exploit Southampton. Look, an early goal could be massive for Newcastle and really settling us down. We do hold a lot more possession now than we did before. So all these things are going to play a part, in my opinion. But very, very interesting. Right, we're going to move on to a different section now. Look, Chris, I'll let you lead on this one, and I'm going to move all the players across because what are your thoughts with regards to the combined 11?
Yes, so Mike, this is a new section, very exciting. We debuted it last week, wasn't it, Pete? It was last week.
Yeah, it was.
For Villa, and funnily enough, we ended up, we're all friends here, Mike. We're very fair, we're very open, you know. And I must admit, I think we're gonna have a big fight on our hands with the defence. I think, as we did last week. But you know, I'll start with some house rules because there was a bit of confusion last week, to be fair, you know, with numerous people. And I think what we're going to do is say we can only pick players who are on this pitch. So I know Alan St-Maximin, I know we've got Alexander Isak, I know there's probably some key players for you that are out, key players for us that are out, but I think it's only fair to go with our both 11s on the pitch and say, well, let's pick our best 11 of who's on this pitch. So, right, so what we're going to do, Mike, is just quickly go through the positions. I'm assuming you play very similar to us, albeit the positions are slightly different, but you know, you've got your forward at the back, you pack the midfield out, and then it's, you know, you've got your wingers and your strikers who can kind of, you know, fluidly move around. So we in terms of positions, we shouldn't have a problem. But let's start with in goal. So we've got Nick Pope and Bazunu. Now, would you like to fight for Bazunu, or would you say that it's fair for us to pick Nick Pope, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think, you know, someone brought up an excellent point earlier in regards to the fact that Bazunu has stopped a lot of goals from going in, and in terms of the goals that we conceded this season, it would have been much, much worse. And I think that's, you know, a great point, and also quite a scary one when I think about it. You know, Bazunu's a very creative goalkeeper and a proactive one. So in terms of the goalkeepers we've had in the past with McCarthy and Forster, they've always been kind of quite reactive. But Bazunu can read a game quite well and know what to do, you know, before it's genuinely happened. In all honesty, I haven't really seen enough of Nick Pope to fully comprehend what he's done for you guys, because I've only really seen what's been happening up front rather than what's happened at the back. But you know, your defensive record doesn't lie. So it would be hard for me to put in Bazunu, who's only got one clean sheet so far this season, against someone who has got more than one clean sheet so far this season. So I can see Keith, the stat man below me, smiling. But it would be difficult to argue against that, you know, looking at the numbers. But in terms of one for the future, Bazunu is definitely going to be up there.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what, Mike? I think that's fair. I mean, I don't want to brag, Mike, and I didn't want to bring this up, but technically we've got the best defensive record in the league.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kick that off. You know, I'm just going to throw that in there. We haven't got to say that over the years. Like this is uncharted territory. But I totally take your point about Bazunu. Pete, Keith, do you think we're going to go with Nick Pope, or do you think Mike's got a point about Bazunu?
Go on, Keith.
I think Mike raises some interesting points there, you know, about the shot stopping, about stopping potential goals. It sort of put us in the mindset of like last few years with Dubravka, really. You know, when you think of the amount of shots Dubravka stopped, didn't always keep a clean sheet, but he would keep Newcastle in games. So I think they're valid points that Mike raises about Bazunu. again, I was thinking about, where we've been previously, and I've never known Newcastle have 6 clean sheets. And, that is testament how well Pope's been playing for Newcastle and the back four.
Yeah.
Pete?
I would add to what Keith said in that, look, I love Bazunu. I think he's a terrific goalkeeper. He'll be one of the, in my opinion, one of the talked about goalkeepers in the Premier League in the next few years. There's no doubt about it. But I think with Nick Pope, before this recent run, he was up there at the top for the most saves made in the Premier League. So you could argue, although he hasn't been busy recently, he has been in previous games, and we've still got 6 clean sheets on the back of that, which holds for me some weight in terms of how good he's been. Let's not forget, we paid 3 million for him. In a down payment of 3 million. The deal was 10 million, down payment of 3 million. You could argue he's England's number 1 goalkeeper. For me, I can't see past Nick Pope, but that's just my opinion.
Can we have Nick Pope, Mike?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Come on. And just to point out, Mike, when we did the show last week with the Villa fans, we picked Emi Martinez, didn't we? So we did. We did.
Oh, wow.
We did.
Oh, so I could have won. Oh no.
Yeah. This is it. Look, we will be more than compromising. Look, this is a combined 11, and where we think where we all think it's reasonable, we'll move it around. But look, Chris, next section, where we're going next?
Right. Okay. Last week we did centre backs, so let's go to centre backs. So we've got Kotchap, Salisu, Botman, and Shah. I'm gonna kick it off, Mike, and I'm gonna say I think Sven Botman's got to be in there. I'll be honest.
Yep.
I think Sven Botman has to be in there. However, as Pete will back this up, Sven Botman can play right centre back. So if there's an argument there for Salisu, we could always move Sven Botman to right centre back. It's hard though with Fabian Schär. Like, Fabian Schär has been absolutely outstanding as well. But Mike, what are your thoughts looking at Kotchap and Salisu?
It's kind of tricky for me to pick between Kotchap and Salisu in terms of who's been the most impressive centre back for us, because I mean they've both looked massive. But I'm gonna pick, if we're going 1-on-1, I'll probably go with Botman and Kotchap in terms of the pairing. Just in terms of how Kotchap can shield a ball, and get things out of trouble very quickly and turn things around. Salisu is not as consistent as perhaps what we've seen from Bella Kotchap. So if I was to pick the pairing, and you're gracious enough to let Shah on his way, then that would be the two I pick.
And I could be barking up the wrong tree here, Mike, and I'll make myself look like a fool. But is Kotchap Dutch?
He's German.
Oh, German. I thought he was
German.
Dutch.
And he's about 12 years old. No, he's about 18. So,
I mean, he has made a great start to his career at Southampton, hasn't he? Yeah, and everybody's
phenomenal.
looking at him. So,
he's in the Germany squad already. So it's, he'll be going to the World Cup. So,
yeah, I mean, at that age and you're in the German squad. Keith, are we in
the Germany squad?
Yeah, you got a start in the Germany squad. I think in the last round of whatever competition it was.
Wow.
So, and in fact, his dislocated shoulder, he's not having surgery on it because he wants to go to the World Cup, and then he's going to have surgery after it. So, it's he's definitely think he's going to be featured there, and he's just looks so composed for an 18-year-old kid. I mean, it's impressive.
Where did you get him from, Mike?
Oh, where did we get him from? That's a very good question.
Sorry to put you on the spot there. I mean, did you pay a lot of money for him, or is he just
one
you swooped in for?
It was one of those ones where the scouts got him for I think it's about 8 million quid or something like that.
VFL Bochum.
Oh, Bochum.
There we go.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
There we go. That's why I didn't remember.
Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it, really, mate?
Pete, Keith, are we happy with that? Do you think it's fair? I mean, I didn't know he was in the Germany squad, and that kind of Anyone who gets in a Germany squad at the age of 18 must have something about them.
Yeah, didn't know. Did
No,
not
I
know.
didn't. I didn't.
But I've seen him play, and I've been massively impressed with him.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
have. I think he's
Yeah.
been terrific as a centre back. Wow. Okay. Look, we are fair. We will open it up to various other players from other teams. This is how we do it. Chris, talk us through the next one. Where are we going next?
Okay, so let's go to right back first. So we've got Ainsley, Maitland-Niles, and Kieran Trippier. I'm gonna let Mike kick off.
Kieran Trippier. Yeah, because Ainsley Maitland-Niles isn't really a right back, so I can't argue with that. It's Trippier.
Boys, I'm assuming you're happy with that.
Yeah, I've already moved.
I would never go against. I would never go against Trippier. You know.
Yeah. Now I like what Mike's done there, because Mike's been very clever there, because Mike's mentioned, obviously Ainsley Maitland-Niles isn't a right back, and that brings us on to our left back. So we've got Peru, yeah, and we've got Dan Burn, who technically isn't really a left back. So Mike, what are we saying?
I'm gonna have to go with Peru in terms of his pace and his ability to do that role completely, in terms of sort of being defensive and also getting quickly up the pitch. So for me, it's Peru, because he's actually a left back. So there we go.
See, I think all season, Pete, we're going to have this problem. If we come up against a team who've got a pretty decent left back, I think we're going to have this problem. And Mike, it's fair. It is fair. Dan Burn's been absolutely fantastic. And the way that we play, Mike, just to give you a bit of insight, and you'll see it at the weekend, when we attack, Kieran Trippier goes further up the pitch, and then Dan Burn pushes in, and then we play with the three centre-backs, which is obviously Dan Burn's preferred position, which is probably why he's in ahead of Matty Target at the minute. But I suppose, despite him playing fantastically well, it is difficult for us to argue against a natural left-back that Dan Burn,
So that's exactly what we'd be doing if we had Lianco in that right back position. That's it, basically carbon copy of what would be happening for us in terms of like Roman Peru would be pushing up the pitch, and then Lianco would sort of slip into the three with the other centre back. So yeah, very familiar with that system.
I could tell Pete is dying to say something here. And Pete might let this one go, but I reckon next week he's going to have something ready. He's going to have something ready for the Chelsea away days. But go on, Pete.
No, look, I'll be honest. Peru, I've not seen him play, so I can't pass judgment on him at all. But I'm just Dan Burn in the 55-man, 65, 175-man England squad. I don't know what number it is nowadays, but yeah, he's in the provisional squad. He deserves to be. We were generous with him last week. And we moved him aside for Ashley Young. Ashley Young,
Mike. We put Ashley Young in.
Yeah, Ashley Young was in there, and we were generous with that, Chris.
You're telling me.
Yeah. And you know what? It was Rich. Rich said he'd been their best player, the best performing player for Aston Villa. So we were like, how can we argue with that? Like, he's been their best player in their team, like with all the players that they've got. And so we were like, oh, okay, fair enough. But he gave away a penalty. He was rinsed time and time again from Miguel Almiron. And it was just like, you know what? Let's put Peru in there and hope for the same.
Yeah. A nice little penalty. That'll do. Yeah. Keith, will you have that, Keith?
This is a very, very sort of fair, balanced squad, isn't it? Really, we'll go 50-50, aren't we? Yeah, with everybody, with the guests.
Up to now.
And it's incredible hospitality. I hope it's the same on the other podcasts that loaded go on. But it's tough, because what I would say, if we're going to go with the Southampton option, is that Perraud had progressed to the various levels of the France international squad. I'm not sure if he made the full international squad, but he was in the under 21s. He was in the under 18s, so he has been there at all levels. Yeah. But it's hard to go against Mr. Burn, because Burn is very dependable. He's proven he's the versatility and the different roles. He hasn't let Newcastle down this season, touch wood. And, fingers crossed he's going to get a berth in the England team at the World Cup at some stage.
Yeah.
But, hey, yeah, I go against your greater knowledge for Southampton there, Mike, but for Road.
Yeah. Well, Keith, you backed it up there with the international shout. It's a fair one. I think it's a fair one. And we've been very reasonable, as Mike will see on the lineup there. So we can have Peru. I mean, my next question now is where do we play Bruno, Mike? Do you know what I mean? Like,
he's in there.
He's got to be in there. He's got to be in there. We can't put John Bruno, Mike.
Yeah. And he would be playing in what sort of as a holding. Wow. Okay.
Well, I'm just putting him in the middle somewhere here. But
if he's a holding midfielder that we've got to go against, I mean, Lavia would be our choice in terms of our holding midfielder. He's not played as much football as we'd like him to, but he is, I would say, our biggest talent. But it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Well, to be fair, Bruno can play as a number 8.
Bruno can play as an 8.
If we play 4-3-3, Lavia can be there, Bruno can be there. I'm just saying, obviously, Longstaff's played well.
Yes.
There's an argument there. Longstaff's been in good form. Lavia, he's been raved about with how good he's been since he moved from Man City. But yeah, I mean,
there's a mad rumor.
I think most Newcastle fans, Mike, would prefer Bruno here.
Right, okay. The more progressive kind of role. Yeah. I mean, there was a mad rumour going around that effectively Chelsea were in for Lavia within the same transfer window and chucked 60 million quid at Southampton, who turned it down. So, which would have been like let's do the maths. That's nice and quick for us. So, £52 million increase within the same transfer window. But yeah, there's just a rumour. I can't imagine Southampton turning down that kind of money, but I'm glad they did, if it did happen.
Get him in. Get him in. That's enough for me, Mike. Are we happy with that, Pete and Keith? I think we push Bruno a bit further forwards and we'll leave Lavia in the holding.
Are you happy with that, Keith?
Chris is the one that's driving.
Keith's not having it, is he?
as long as Bruno is in that team,
he's got to be in.
He's further up the pitch.
Chris, Keith's doing this. He's pushing it all on you.
Just put him in.
It's all on Chris.
Just put him in.
As long as it doesn't happen by 6:00 on a Sunday afternoon, as long as it doesn't play out like that on the day, I'll be happy.
Now it feels like we could be looking at a 4-3-3 here, so we need another midfield partner to go alongside Bruno in the slightly more advanced position of Lavia. So are we looking at it? Can Avibo play on the wing, Mike, or does he tend to play through the middle?
He can play on the wing. Yeah, and he can play on the wing, and he quite often does and switches sides. So yeah. But,
I've set those 3 potential players up. I mean, Longstaff could potentially be there.
Yeah, he could.
4 players to choose from who could play in this other additional role. Obviously, we're only picking, for those that have come late in the chat, we're only picking those that are in the 2 11s that we've put together. So, no Shelby, no Fraser, no ASM, no Joe Linton because he's suspended. Only the players that are picked in the 2 11s that we've chosen. So we've got the 4 players there. We've got Longstaff we can bring in as a conversation, Ward-Prowse, Willock, and Aribo. Where did we go?
I'm just thinking in terms of who's going to be in front of these 3 players. We're doing a 4-3-3, and I can't see many shouts for Southampton players in the front 3, if I'm honest.
Well, the one that I think it'd be worth talking about would probably be Murphy. I'm not sure Murphy would get in on the left, if I'm honest.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we'll tell you what, should we come back to that one? I think, Mike, you'll agree we're having Wilson up top.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
Miggy Almiron's got to be on the right.
Almiron has got to be up there, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got this position, and then we've got the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Murphy, there's options there. I think that's all we've got left, really. I mean, look, I might move Longstaff out of this equation and just leave it to Aribo, Willock, and Ward-Prowse in terms of what's available. So, who do we play in this position here in the third of a midfield?
If you had to pick one of the between a Dozy and a Aribo, Mike, who would you want in that 11?
Aribo.
Oh,
Aribo
really?
feels like he could be a left winger, you know.
Just in terms of the his strength and creativity, I would say, you know, because ultimately, you know, you're going to have opportunities for through balls up to the front men, but yeah, I mean, Aduzi hasn't been starting games for Southampton. He's sort of come on as subs, so we've not really seen as much, and he's not really done a full 90 minutes yet. So, kind of be hard to argue between not picking Aribo over Aduzi.
Keith, what are your thoughts?
Certainly, certainly from the couple of little bits that I've seen of Southampton, I've been impressed with Aribo on the wing. I think he can create a few issues, create a few problems. Certainly did against Arsenal in that game against Arsenal. So if I was to pick a Southampton player, it would be him. And also Ward-Prowse is a concern as well, certainly from the set plays. Full England international now as well. A couple of goals for England in the international setup and 11 goals from midfield last year. Really impressive. Always a worry from set plays as well.
See, this is why we got Stato. He's hitting the England international, the goals. It's a great point. It's a great point. Pete, does it sound and feel like we're going with Aribo on the left and Ward-Prowse in the middle? Is that all right?
I think there's an argument for Ward-Prowse there, for what Keith said, for the goals that he scored, for his ability of set pieces. I think he's more than capable of playing there. And bearing in mind, it's important that we remember it's only based on the 11 that we've got here. I mean, I think if Joe Linton was in this conversation, I think Joe Linton would be playing here personally. I think he'd be in that conversation without a doubt. Willock's been playing well recently, but I think with his goals and assists and his ability from set pieces, I think Ward-Prowse is a decent conversation. I think it'd be anything from those two, with the potential of Aribo playing on the left potentially, and and doing it that way. That's just my thoughts. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with Ward-Prowse being here. I'm happy with Ward-Prowse being here with Aribo there.
I hadn't planned on doing this, Mike, but there was a question in the chat, and just while we're talking about him, it was an interesting point. I just want to quickly throw it up, not to go off topic, but Michael Pomar says another question. In the summer, we had 75 million being quoted for James Ward-Prowse. Was that realistic, and is he playing up to that valuation this season? Like, if you were to sell him now, Mike, how much do you think you get for him now?
If we were to sell him now, I mean, I think, is he playing up to that valuation? No. But if we were to sell him now because of that 5-year contract, it kind of has to be that number. So, I mean, that's what it purely boils down to. It's the fact that any kind of discussion for a player with more than 4 years left on his contract, it kind of has to be a big number to pry him out of that. So, a player like James Ward-Prowse is kind of in a situation now where his next deal, whatever it will be his last. And he's kind of in a situation now where he will be a Southampton legend. And is it really worth going to another club for the final 2-3 years of your playing career and then tarnishing your Southampton legend status? I mean, it's kind of a difficult decision for him to make, really. But ultimately, I think in Ward-Prowse's mind, he's thinking, if I can get in this England squad, that's all I'm really going for. Am I going to be part of a squad that's going to be winning the league? Am I going to be part of a squad that's in the Champions League? That might be in the conversation in his head as well. I would never begrudge, holding on to any player that would want aspirations for that, because we're never going to be that. So, but I think he's just got to make a decision for himself, and I think whatever decision he finally makes will be the right one. But that's what's on the table, really. You know, Southampton legend, loved by the fan base, one of our own.
Yeah.
Is it really worth it for whatever comes next? And, you know, no disrespect to you guys, you know, will you be winning a league next season or the season after? I'm not sure, but, you know, I'm sure it will eventually come. So that's got to be playing on his mind, really. So tricky one there.
Yeah.
You know when Fumby's in the house, because Fumby's just put a comment on 75 million for 3 kicks only. Welcome, Fumby. Glad you can make it. But always
worth every penny.
Always one
every
to
penny.
never ever mince his words, and he just straight off the bat. But Vicknell has mentioned a good point on the back of what Geordie Tune for Life has just said. Geordie Tune for Life said it's harsh on Adams. Adams, you know, is a decent forward. Put him on the left. And Vicknell, Southampton fan has put he's good in the build-up, but his finishing is horrendous. So interesting points there. I don't know whether anyone feels anything different about that, but Ward-Prowse, I think, is a fair assessment there. I'm still not convinced about it. I've got to be honest. I'm not convinced about this, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. I am willing to go Ward-Prowse and Aribo if we take out this man and put Burn in there. I don't know what you guys think. That's just my feeling on this.
Well, Chris is not at the wheel now, is he? So you can make that change, Pete, while he's not at the wheel. So, but yeah, I mean, going back to my original, what I was saying earlier, I find it hard to go against Dan Burn. He's never let Newcastle down this season, and he's been versatile in taking that position up, really. And any concerns about the pace, you know, that back four, you can't really get any stronger, can you, at Newcastle's at the minute? So,
What do you think? Well, go on, Keith. Finish what you were saying.
I was just about to add there the point about from Geordie Tune for Life about Adams as well, and the Southampton fan, brilliant point as well. You know, I certainly agree. End product there from Adams this season and last season as well for Southampton. You could easily switch and put him on the wing. I think 5 and 13, brilliant. Southampton haven't been getting the results, but he's still been getting the goals.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Would you agree with that, Mike, or would you disagree with that? Well, firstly, on the Burn Perud movement, would you sacrifice Perud if it meant an Adams or an Aribo on the left, or would you still stick to your guns?
I would say, well, defensively, it's kind of hard for me to argue a defence that's only got 1 clean sheet so far this season to have 50% of that back line. So yeah, I guess that tells you I would concede that left back position, although he's not really left back. But who knows, if Carl Walker-Peters was fit, it would be a different conversation going on right now.
You are absolutely right, and it would be definitely a different conversation. But I'm so glad you said that, because I just feel like my heart is full now.
Heart is full.
Not just my heart, Geordie Tune for Life. His heart is full also, because he loves Dan Burn way more than I do. And he's been at loggerheads with me whenever I've talked about Dan Burn in a negative sense. So look, his form infamy fully justifies him being in that position. And look,
looks like we're playing Connect 4, doesn't it, with that 4 going down in that line there? Look at that.
What's that?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's like we're playing Connect 4.
Just don't lift the tray, whatever you do.
It's like for me, with the back 5 that we've had, and we've had 6 clean sheets, best defensive, best defensive team in the league. It feels difficult for me to have, only 3 out of the 5 positions not filled by Newcastle United players, and Dan Burn has been a huge part of that, certainly recently. So I think he deserves that. I'm more than willing to negotiate. Ward-Prowse is a good player. I think most people last season, most Newcastle players last season, fans last season were saying that they would take Ward-Prowse at Newcastle if we were to go in with him in the summer just gone. So his record, it proves that we would take him. Aribo is the unknown quantity, and to be fair, Michael Palmer in the chat has mentioned, if Alan Maximin was in this conversation and we'd had him in the starting lineup, I think it'd have been a different story. I think we'd have had Alan Maximin in here ahead of Aribo, but he wasn't in the original 11. That's why he's not in that squad. And so Aribo is the unknown quantity. I think is a right fit there. I think. Yeah. How does that team look for you guys? But before we move to the end point of the show, are you happy with that? Mike, are you happy with that? Having those 4 players in the combined 11, confirmed. Would you be happy with that moving forward?
Yeah, no, I'd take that. I mean, I guess the only real question mark is that left side, really, because it's an area where someone's saying about Shea Adams could fulfill that if he was playing more up top kind of role, but it'd be more in the sort of the Callum Wilson position. But also
we'll let you have that decision. We'll let you make that decision because they're both Southampton players. Who would you prefer in that position based on what I think Geordie Toon for Life has said?
Yeah, I mean, but based on that position, I would say probably, because Adams would be more of a central kind of role. So I'd still go with Aribo there. As hard-working as Adams is, and he's by far our hardest-working player in the Southampton squad, it would be more of a kind of a central position that he would be playing. Aduzi would be another good shout, but really we haven't seen enough of what he can do fully, but again, he's going to be a big talent for the future. But looking at that lineup, as I said, I can't really argue with a squad that's got so many clean sheets in the league in terms of dominating too much of that centre back pairing. So yeah, no, I think that looks good.
Chris, look, I kind of put my foot down with Ben because it was driving me mad, and I apologise.
I came back and then he was.
I'm really sorry, but I couldn't let it go. I agreed in there, and I was like, should I agree? I don't agree.
It's like I was cancelling Christmas the way you were going.
Yeah, you know what? Look, Chris, take over from this. Are you happy with that squad? Is there anything you consider changing? Keith, coming with this as we kind of wrap up.
Do you know what? Yeah, just to touch on it quickly, I think I appreciate Mike letting us put that bit in there, and do you know what? He does deserve it. Like you said earlier, all the questions that have been asked of him, we were worried about him against Anthony. We were worried about him against who else would be panicking him over? There was another team when they had to quit. Anthony Gordon at Everton, and he's answered all them critics. And he has quietly gone about his work, and he does offer that three-pronged centre back. When we do play the way we do, so he is invaluable in that sense. I think the only thing I wanted to add is obviously I know we've only done 2 of these, but it's a valid point. Every time we've had these discussions, we've actually talked about Sean Longstaff more than we have Joe Willock. And for me, that proves that we need more from Joe Willock. If Joe Willock was adding goals to his games, I mean, look at Miggy. We've had this conversation with Mike, and it's just like, Miggy, in. And I think if we start seeing some more goals from Joe Willock, we'll start talking a bit more about Joe Willock. Not saying Joe Willock's playing badly, but I just think he needs to start, trying to add a bit of end products, which we know he's capable of because we saw it in his loan spell before he signed permanently. But no, I really like the lineup, and I think it's a really good team. I feel very sorry for the biggest one. I feel sorry for is Fabian Schär, but at the same time, you can't ignore an 18-year-old getting in the German squad. Can't ignore it.
Yeah, there's a few in the chat that are saying, I think. The Dugan family's mentioned about a comment that Yano had mentioned earlier on about, the midfield that's mostly sort of, Southampton players. This is a combined 11. We have to make allowances for other teams. It's easier for us to say we're 4th in the league, we're playing really, really well. We'll just have a whole 11 of Newcastle United, but what's the point of a combined 11? We have to consider other players from other teams. And look, I think the likes of Ward-Prowse, Kocher, who Mike's mentioned quite rightly, and Chris has just talked about. Lavia, 18 years old, Man City player, defensive midfielder. Aribo, the unknown quantity. I think they're relatively, comfortable replacements in the team for the 11 that we've got. And I have to stress this: it's only based on the 11 that we've got for the ones that we think is going to play for Newcastle on Sunday, and the 11 that we think is going to play for Southampton. It could be quite different. We don't know, but we're only going off what we see right now, and based on that. Go on, Chris.
Sorry, Pete. I was just going to say, and let's not forget, if you offered, most fans, if they saw Kotchap and they saw the fact that he's in the German squad playing well for Southampton beyond his years, and the fact he's 18, if you offered him in a swap for Shah, some people would look at Shah's age. Some people would say he's been a great servant. Kotchap's got many years ahead of him, and he's settled into the Premier League. So some people would say it'd be a good deal. If we were to sell Fabian Shah tomorrow, we'd probably get 10-12 million for him based on his age. Kotchap, if Southampton were to sell Kotchap, he's going to be worth a hell of a lot more than that. Same with Lavia. We've said that we need a new defensive midfielder. If you said to most fans, swap Lavia for Sean Longstaff, you'd probably go, yeah. Ward-Prowse, Mike's spoken about, last season he was getting valued at 75 million. Again, without sounding harsh, would you swap Ward-Prowse for Joe Willock at this present moment? Some would argue you probably would.
Yeah.
And again, Aribo, we're basing Aribo purely on Jacob Murphy. If you ask most fans which is one of the positions that we need to upgrade, or who are the players that we need to upgrade, most fans will come back with Jacob Murphy. So,
in that 11, Chris, in our Newcastle 11 that we put out there, Murphy would be the one that everyone would say we need to upgrade. 100%.
So it backs up what we've done there.
Yeah,
I think
it does. You're absolutely right. And Fumby's put in the chat again. Shout out to Mike. I watched his match preview yesterday. He does a good job. P.S. Who is Kotchap? And we've talked about him from beyond the show already tonight. He's an 18-year-old centre back that's already been picked for Germany. So he clearly is a talented boy. And I think most Newcastle fans have learned a little bit or a lot tonight from what Mike's given us from a Southampton perspective.
The last thing I wanted to say, by the way, Pete, I'm a little bit annoyed about, because obviously now that Perot has gone, that means we're not going to get a penalty at the weekend.
Look,
so
I'm still confident. That we can get a penalty. We've got Amir on. We've got Wilson, who's a penalty taker. We're still capable of making that happen. There is no doubt about it. But look, I'm going to end that tactical point from now. Really, really good chat. Really, really good chat about tactics, but also the loaded 11. So we'll post that up on social media tomorrow and get people's thoughts, and we'll make it clear that actually it was based on just the 11s that we chose. And no doubt we'll get Joe Linton's and ASMs and all the rest of it thrown out of there, but it's just based on those 11s that we've chosen. Chris, have we got a few questions just to round up before we get predictions and see out the show?
Yeah, so Alan Brown asked a really good question. Welcome to the chat, Alan, this evening. Southampton have always been great at developing youngsters. Who are the ones to currently look out for, other than Kotchap?
Yeah, well, yeah, Bella Kotchap would be one. It's kind of a fascinating one because we've always been one to develop youngsters, but we've been buying youngsters and developing them as opposed to putting them through our academy. There's a few in our academy. Diamond Edwards in there, but they're kind of like yet to be fully developed and make an impact into the squad. There's also a young player I've just forgotten the name of, but he went to Chelsea, bought him, and he went to Chelsea to be developed there and didn't get on at all, and he's come back. And I think he went to Newcastle and played in the reserves and scored like a hat-trick for fun at St James's Park.
Yeah,
and
Kyle someone.
Yeah, we were close to signing him.
Yeah, I think it's Tyler.
Was it Kyle someone? Or
No,
Tyler?
Tyler someone.
Tyler.
Yeah.
So I guess that's been the only kind of like glimmer of light of of us sort of, progressing young talent from our own academy. But yeah, we've been buying young players and developing young players from elsewhere in the league, help with our sort of scouting profile. And the fact that we pretty much bought the whole Man City academy, and we wanted to buy more, but they kind of stopped us at Tyler Dibning. Thank you, Visnell. Yeah, Tyler Dibning, who I was forgetting there, but yeah, no, we've been buying basically a lot of young players, so it is our ethos. It will continue to be our ethos, but the thing that's changed now that we got bought by Sports Republic is the fact that we don't have to sell to acquire. We kind of have a buffer so that we're not in a desperate situation where we simply, to get one in, we've got to get one out. So that's the big change, I think, in the last 5 years or so. I think it was really when Koeman left, and because he left because of the fact that there was no future investment in players at the club, and he was wanting to spend big money. So it's kind of been the ethos since then to develop young talent and buy from leagues all over Europe and the SPL and sort of develop from there. So yeah.
This is a bit of a double-edged one, so I'll kind of ask you them both and maybe slightly tweak it as well. And Michael says, we're Southampton holding out for Chelsea to loan Brozier again. And Ryan also asks, how has Adam Armstrong fared at Southampton so far? I know he made quite a explosive start, didn't he? And then he faded out the team, and now I've seen him back in the 11. But I suppose what I want to ask you, Mike, is, do you miss Brozier? Do you wish, would you sign Brozier back? And also, just touch on Adam Armstrong for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was a massive fan of Armando Brozier, and, looking at the first part of last season, he was fantastic, and really made a difference. The latter part of the season, he kind of really didn't show up, but I always looked at him and I was thinking, where's his head at? Is he thinking, I want to be fit and healthy for Chelsea next season? He wasn't really putting in 100%. But in terms of what he was able to do in the first part of the season, I would say, I kept calling him like the next Erling Haaland from what he was doing. But that probably might be a bit bold to say. But yeah, no, and I think unfortunately he burnt his bridges going back to Chelsea, and sort of burnt his bridges a bit with Southampton. So there was always hope that a permanent deal could be done. But he signed a long-term contract with Chelsea, which basically meant that any deal that was to be done with Southampton, West Ham, or whoever was looking at him was always going to be 40 million plus. And for a player like that, it's just not going to happen. And it was just the fact that he was tied up in a contract that no one got him effectively. And quite commonly I would look at the likes of, you got Romelu Lukaku, Timo Werner and Armando Brozier, who are you picking? And I'm thinking Brozier all day long, and keep the change in your back pocket. It's one to be said for that. So yeah, I was disappointed but not surprised. I think the best case scenario we could see was another extension on the loan to do a year more, but that didn't happen. We don't know why, but there we go. And in terms of how Adam Armstrong has fared at Southampton so far, like you said, started fantastically, scored a great opening debut goal against Everton. Really excited for his future. He also scored again, I think it was against Aston Villa. So it started actually quite well, because Shea Adams, when he came to the club, I think it took him pretty much majority of the season to get his debut goal. But all in all, he's kind of just been moved around a bit too much and not really had enough game time to really get things going. But in the same respect, he's never fully been someone to warrant the game time given to him, if that makes sense, in terms of what he's been able to do in a short space of time. And unfortunately, when you play like that, you just end up, you get brought on for the last 10-20 minutes of a game, you don't do anything, you're right off that entire game, but really you didn't really have a fair window to get something done. But it's kind of tricky, because with that up front, I just feel we need someone bouncing off to be able to create something off the opposing striker. So whether that be Shea Adams, but that always used to be the job Shea Adams did with Danny Ings, in terms of Shea could hold up the play, give a bit more time, Danny could be very creative and score a goal. And I just don't think Adam Armstrong was quite at that level And I think that's fair to say, but he's certainly a talented player. But can he cut in at Premier League standards? The jury's out, I'm afraid.
And then the very last question for you, Mike, before we go to predictions and wrapping up the show. And this is always a really interesting one. This is from Lisa Mole asking, are you happy that Joe Linton is ruled out on Sunday? I mean, obviously, Joe Linton's been a massive turnaround for us. As you're probably aware, he started playing central midfield and he's become this battler, this, enforcer of the central midfield. And I, for one, will really miss him at the weekend, and as I'm sure Keith and Pete will as well. But from an opposition point of view, are you happy he's out, or are you not fussed either way? Or I don't know how much you've seen of him, but just be interested to get your opinion on him.
Yeah, what a turnaround. I mean, flipping heck. I mean, I just think with Joe Linton first came to the club, the good old days of Steve Bruce, Mike Ashley and Joe Linton, it's kind of like what a contrast it is now. So yeah, I mean, naturally I've been very impressed from what I've seen from Joe Linton in terms of he's suddenly turned him into like a creative sort of midfielder kind of role, which has been quite something to behold. So yeah, naturally I'm very happy that Joe Linton, he's ruled out for Sunday. Is he suspended or injured or suspended? Okay, naughty boy. So, but yeah, no, it's always going to be one that I think, especially where we've been lacking in midfield, any kind of upper hand that we can get on that. I think with Lavia coming back in, it's going to be a lot better for us in general. But yeah, any advantage we can get in the middle of the park is always going to be greatly accepted.
Definitely. All right, great questions in there. Sorry if we didn't get a chance to answer some of your other questions as well. Some really good questions in tonight. But look, it's been a really, really good show with lots and lots of talking points throughout as well. Just before we wrap up the show with a few sponsors, I want to get some round of predictions. So 2:00 kickoff on Sunday. So around the 4:00 mark, what do you think the score is going to be come Sunday afternoon? Chris, we'll come to you first.
I've been toying with this, Pete.
I
want to say a win. I really want to say a win. I was thinking 1-1, and then I thought, don't know about 1-1. I think we'll score 2. So I'm going to say I think it'll be 2-2.
2-2. Tom Dixon's got a 1-3. Penman. He's got a Penman Newcastle. Wilson twice and Amir on again. Wow, Tom. Good lad. Right, he's got a 2-2. Chris Hall on the fence. Keith, remember this. Chris Hall on the fence. Right. Mike, what are you going for from a Southampton perspective?
Well, firstly, I'd say I'm flattered by Chris, the fact that we're going to score 2 goals. So thank you for that. I really do appreciate your encouragement there. Much appreciated. Do you know what? Looking at this, I mean, we did our preview last night, so anyone that's watched that will know what I've already said on that. And it's really difficult for us to look past the amount of clean sheets that you guys have got and your defensive record. Had we not had Lavia fit, I think this would be game, set, and match already. I think, in terms of how we'll be overrun in the middle of the park. But for me, I want to say 2-0, but I've gone with 1-0 because I just don't see us getting past you lot too many times. And but I am concerned about our back line and our defensive abilities against, your front three. But it's, in terms of what I saw against Arsenal in the second half, it was pretty decent, actually. So the fact of that and adding in Romeo Lavia, I'm kind of feeling a bit more confident than I was a few days ago. So I'm going to go with a 1-0 win to Southampton.
Wow, 1-0 win to Southampton. Okay.
So bold. Last chance of any points before the international break.
You're backing your team. There's nothing wrong with that at all. We do it time and time again. So I appreciate that. From is gone. Joe's out. ASM in. Joined the team for last. Got a 2-0 Newcastle United win. Chris Banks has got a 3-0 Newcastle United win. Vincel has gone A 2-1 Saints win, Mara and Lavia to score. Mike's happy with that. Look at it, he's got his support in the chat. Great champion with Tyler in the chat as well. Michael Pomo has gone 2-0 Newcastle. I don't see Southampton having the tools to stop the trips, Miggy and Bruno axis. You know what? I can't disagree with that. I really can't. Dugan family's gone 1-0 Newcastle, might be a tight game. Yano's gone. Yano, I love Yano. He's great. He's one of our spanners. I love him. 0-5, Mickey to continue his run, and Wilson to get a hat trick. If you want anyone to kind of just go out there and just tell it how it is, it's Yano. Dazzler has got a 1-0 away win to the Toon. Yeah, conservative one. Look, I think we'd all take that as Newcastle fans, as long as we got the win. I don't think anyone would argue that whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Lisa's gone 2-0, Miggy and Wilson. Thank you to our spanner as well. But I'm going to come back to Keith. Interesting, Keith. Look, this is one where the fence is nice and steady. So, yeah, are you going to join Chris on that fence, or are you going to, jump either end of that? Or what are you thinking, Keith, with regards to the prediction for this Sunday?
Well, what I would say about Southampton, the home form in particular, there's a couple of defeats in there, but they've always scored at home, bar one game this season against Man United. So it can be quite tight. I think Che's been in great form, and I'm a bit concerned with Joe Linton being out. I'm never thought last season or so I'd say this, or the season before, Joe Linton not playing, but I'm always more confident with Joe Linton being in the team. I just think obviously the way he breaks things up, and I'm always a bit more confident. So him not being there, I'm not as confident in a surefire win. And I think we've never beaten Southampton back to back at St Mary's or at the Dell or anywhere, Southampton. Or even 6. Can you remember last season, Mike, Chelsea winning 6-0 at St Mary's last year?
Do you know what? That was I don't want to say it, but that was our 9-0 defeat, and that could have been 9-0. So that was kind of one of those. I was in the French Alps, so I was actually late getting in to watch that game, and I thought, I'm only 10 minutes in, and I was like, it's 3-0 already. I'm going back out to the pub. So it was one of those. But watching that back, that was that could have been easily could have been. I'm hoping not for Sunday though. Please no.
Yeah, I was giving out to Chris Wood now.
Wow. He's going for it. He's really going for it. Interesting. What was that prediction, Keith?
Yeah, I just think it's going to be a more surprising game than people think. Right. This run can't go on forever.
He doesn't want to say it.
Come on.
Yeah. Actually, Chris Hall stole my thunder a bit earlier. I think Wilson will score. Chris Hall stole my thunder. I'm going for a Desmond.
Yes.
2-2.
Desmond 2-2. Oh, he's on the fence with Chris Hall. No, come on, man.
I've got to keep Geordie Toon for life happy in the chat, haven't I?
Of course. But look, I'm gonna be on the other side of the fence. I'm gonna go a Newcastle United 2-0 win. I just think our defense is class. We're playing really, really well at the moment. Another week's rest after the Villa game. I just think that. Come on.
I'm loving this heel heat here in the chat.
It really is. You are kind of like, you're almost like the John Cena of Loading Bag. You are John Cena of Loading Bag. Like, you've got so many that love you and so many that see you as a massive heel in the channel. I love it.
Mike, do you know what I loved as well? It was like when I'm sure it was the last show, and we asked Keith, and then at the end we Keith stopped talking, and we were like, What was your prediction, Keith? And it's happened again. It happened again. It happened again. It wasn't just us. It happened again.
It got to the point where you spoke and then you didn't actually say what your prediction was. You were like, "What is it?"
Yeah, that was Wi-Fi. That was Wi-Fi gremlins last week. But I still got the match. I got the match right. Newcastle did win. So when I came back on it quickly.
Love it.
Yeah, that's right there, yeah.
But like I say, I'm going to go 2-0 Newcastle United win. I just think our defense is really solid at the moment, and we're scoring goals, which we're not accustomed to. We're not used to that. So I think that's going to be how it is. But look, I think the predictions are going to be really interesting. We'll keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for our combined 11 that we'll post out at some point tomorrow. And we'll share it with everyone else, and we'll get everyone else on social media's thoughts on that. And Mike will tag you in that as well, and we'll get hopefully the Southampton's perspective on all things combined 11. But look, just before we go to sponsors, Mike, absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Gone on a slightly longer than we anticipated, but it's been such a great chat. Really, really enjoyed having you on to talk.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure, Mike. Always a pleasure. Great to talk to you. And just before we sign off, we have to give massive thanks to our sponsors who are in the chat tonight as well. So Shyburns, Simon is in the chat, www.shyburns.com. If you haven't checked it out already, please check out the website for all things Shyburns. Massive supporter of mental health, as you can see on one of the many t-shirts that supports everything mental health. Huge support to the channel as well. And there are lots of t-shirts available in various different colors in support of Loaded and also mental health. And of course, we have our away day shirt, which I am also donning right now, the Brazilian away day shirt. We do love playing away, which I will also be saying towards the end of the show. Pins and prints, thank you for your support as always. Lots and lots of pins and prints available, but just a little snippet there of what we've got available. And Marty, spoke to Marty earlier on this evening. Thank you for your support as always. Massive array of different clothing lines, t-shirts, hoodies, various different tops that are available. Check out Machine House if you haven't already for some of their gear. And of course, Dean, great supporter of the channel. Hope you're well in your recovery. We mention it every week, but we truly hope that you are on the road to recovery from your injury. And of course, check out the Geordie Rise if you haven't already, for all of their fantastic gear that is available to them. And of course, we can't go anywhere without mentioning Russ, who's in the chat tonight. TheRadiatorShed.com. If you haven't checked out the Radiator Shed, and Keith and Mike are in jail. They're in the Radiator jail right now. Yes, there we go. Look, if you haven't checked out the Radiator Shed, please do. A fantastic company. And of course, look, I'm not going to spill through it. We know it already. A fantastic Northeast-based company that cover most regions in the UK in terms of delivery and all of their different things that are available to them. Delivery direct included in the price in mainland UK. Top quality materials made from plate steel, providing longevity. All designs are manufactured in Italy. Aluminium rads are very environmentally friendly and are perfect for heat sourced pumps. They offer home survey service and will install if required. So get down to theradiatorshed.com if you haven't checked them out already. I'm gutted we've already got our radiator in our kitchen that we've already talked about. I would have got Russ to provide us a radiator if we hadn't already, but some fantastic ones. Fitzerovia, we've got the Hampstead as well, and the multi-sec available. And the multi-set is available in black and white. Russ confirmed it a week or so ago. So if you haven't already, get your interest in there for a black and white radiator. If I hadn't already, I would have got one. I'm gutted I haven't. But look,
Pete,
go on.
Did they do a red and white one for Mike? That's what I want to know.
I was gonna
Oh,
say.
wow. Well, you have to speak to Mike, possibly. We don't know. But look, on top of that, we are so close. We're moving ever closer to that 5K subscribers. We are 330 away. If you haven't clicked subscribe already, please click the subscribe button and join the Loaded family. We've had, nearly 100 join in the last week or so. And so many have talked about how good the channel is and they've enjoyed the shows that have been available. There are plenty more to come. Just click that subscribe button. It means the world to us and it only takes a second to do so. So click that button and come and join the Loaded Mag family. And of course, if you want to become a member, it's $1.99 a month. You can only do it by desktop, laptop. You can't do it by mobile phone, but it just takes 30 seconds to become a member to Loaded Mag NUFC. $1.99 a month. Click that blue button and become a member and join again the Loaded family. And there's so many members in the chat already at this moment in time. Of course, we are on Spotify and Apple. So every show gets uploaded 24 hours after the show has taken place. So if you haven't already, please do so. And come and join the Loaded Mag show. Look, massive thank you to Mike and Michael Palmer said that. Thanks for joining the lads, joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. And look, I think we're about to join you for a short period on your show to do a little bit of a preview. So really looking forward to that in a bit of the turnaround. But look, before we leave you, thank you to everyone in the chat. We love the questions and love the support from everyone. It really means the world to us. Really, really appreciate that. So thank you as always. And of course, I can't go without saying we do love playing away. You guys take care. Have a fantastic weekend and hopefully, fingers crossed, 3 points. Oh.